Good evening and welcome back to the third tier. Sorry about the delay. Tonight you've got 3 for the price of 1 on our 1 to 24 predictions. As me, Matt, and our newcomer Graham goes through our predictions for the seasons ahead. Now, these are predictions where it's just guesswork, so please don't hate us afterwards. But at the same time, there hopefully is some logic behind our choices. But first, let me introduce you to Graham. Graham, welcome to your first episode of being a presenter on the third tier.
Hey, I brought Bjork with me. I hope she does a good job as well. I'm sure she will. But thanks for having me.
Mate.
Well, we've been comparing them. She hasn't said much, to be fair, which is unusual for Bjork. But we've come to a conclusion between 1 to 24. I don't know if it's you mentioned it being an educated guess. It's not even that for me. It's just popping teams about and putting them in places. Hopefully I'll get at least 2 of them right. They'll come the end of the season. My predictions on the third tier have not been that great thus far.
No, they haven't. We won't delve into that. Matt, good evening. I can see you holding a very nice bottle. Funny you've got that.
Beer company. As we start, there we go. A little butcher's bandage tonight.
I've got some Hoppy Robson. Graham is yet to sample the lovely beer. I'm sure we'll send him some soon. And also, I have got, you can't see it, where is it? The third tier pint glass.
It's the advertising out of the way anyway.
Absolutely. So good evening all. Please get your comments in as we go along as well. Like I said before, please don't hate us. I've written probably about 15 different tables. I know Matt pondered over this for a long time, and Graham did his 2 minutes ago. So Graham probably is going to be the most accurate because we've pondered it for too long. But like any, we'll start with 24th. Graham, as you are the newcomer, you may kick us off. We're going to give you all of our predictions for each position. We haven't agreed previously to this, and the only one I've seen is Matt's because I caved and watched his excellent video the other night, so please go and check that out on his channel. But Graham, kick us off with who you think is going to finish bottom of League One.
This has got some kind of theory behind it. Haven't seen much of them. I've seen them in a playoff final, but then they lost their manager. They've lost probably their best player. I'm going straight in with Morecambe as bottom.
Last week's guests will never return.
I forgot they were. I'm an arrogant Sunderland fan. I forgot they were here, and then I was like, yeah, damn, 24th. I hope they prove me wrong because that would be nice. But I don't think they will. They lost their manager and they've lost their best player. So I'm saying Morecambe. Morecambe fans got it right in for me now. But
well,
yeah.
If you're listening after the show or live, I haven't got you bottom. I have gone with Cambridge. My theory behind that is they've lost a very good right back in Noyle, has gone to Doncaster, and they've lost a lot of goals, haven't they, Matt, in Mullen going to Moneybags Wrexham. The chance to play at a high league, and he's dropped down, technically 2 divisions to play with the Welsh side. So they've lost a lot of goals. They've brought in a few, but for me, not strong enough and deep enough to survive the drop. I don't know if you want to tell the viewers who you've gone with 24th.
Cambridge United as well. Sorry, Cambridge fans. That's 2 of us that have got you going down. Paul Mullin, for me, is a huge reason. I know the right back's highly rated, Noyle, who's gone to Donny, but you're stepping up and you've got to find 30 goals all of a sudden. And I'm sure Cambridge fans have got their opinions on the reasons behind Mullin's move to Wrexham. It's probably nothing to do with the fact that they've got 2 Hollywood superstars pummeling 6 million into the club when he could have played in League One and he's dropped back into non-league. But yeah, that's the main reason for me is they've brought in a couple of good players. I like the look of, is it Jack Lancaster, who was highly rated at Ipswich last season, but I just don't think they have enough.
They've got a couple of experience in Lloyd Jones as well from Wolverhampton, George Williams from Bristol Rovers. But as you say, it's probably not going to be enough, but it's going to be exciting to see the likes of Hal Houlihan sort of copes with League One again, because he was an absolute cheat code at League Two last season. But it ended up being a lot of him and Mullin linking up to to sort of have Cambridge's success last season. Matt, over to you for number 23.
23rd is a team that I basically predict to get relegated every season. And then if anyone's watched my video, I said they're like Harry Houdini over the last 8 weeks of the season and managed to get out of trouble. But the big difference for me this season is they've got to do it without Joe Pigott. And I don't think they have enough goals in them again, and that's Wimbledon.
Yeah. Graham, over to you.
I went with Cambridge as 23rd. I don't blame Mullen for going to Wrexham. I would go too, because to be fair, imagine how great that would be, just talking to Ryan Reynolds just for a bit. Doing a bit of It's Always Sunny. Like, the thing is, people say it's money, right? And fair enough. He's got good money. But then he could set you up in Hollywood. You could get a bit part in It's Always Sunny. And it becomes quite a good move then. But for Cambridge, that means that they're probably going to go down. I feel kind of bad on the promoted teams. I've gone Morecambe and Cambridge to go straight back down. But I think they've both lost really important players on a serious note. And when you lose important players, and you know what, at this level, you can pick someone up from like lower down the divisions, a bit like Gillingham did last year with Oliver. But it's few and far between in it. It's like not everyone's as good as Accrington. They're just picking out like someone from non-league to replace a 20, 30 goal season striker. So I'm wrong a lot of the time. Somehow people still listen to me for some reason. But I think Cambridge are probably going to fall because they've just lost too much. And they were good last season, but it's every division's getting a bigger gap between them. I think League One and League Two are probably the smallest in comparison to the English leagues, but I still think League One, can you call it strong because a lot of big teams have fell into it recently and are already in it? Maybe there's a lot of big name teams that have big expectations I would know about. In Cambridge and Morecambe might find it difficult to pick up the required points they need game on game. But you never know. They could end up picking up someone up by the end of the window that surprises us all, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I've gone with Fleetwood for 23rd. Certainly finishing the bottom four. They've lost too much quality from last year. They've signed reasonably well with players like Edmondson and Morton, but with the lack of depth, especially up front, I don't think they're going to score enough goals. I think defensively they can be reasonably organised. The midfield can be well organised. And they've got Shaden Morris, who's doing some good stuff. I've seen Napper's tweet about him. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around him as well. But again, it's that, have they got enough over the length of a season to do it? And for me, Fleetwood haven't. And for me, that's the reason they're going down, obviously, in my opinion. Next, obviously, we've got 22nd. Graham, who have you got at 22nd?
Lo and behold, Fleetwood. I just don't really like Fleetwood. Hot take. Terrible goal music. And that's enough for me. If you play that kind of music, at some point you're going to get relegated. And I think it'll be this season. Forget the players have lost, because that would make total sense for me to say that and name the players and the things they've lost. But I'm going to base it just on their goal music. I think at one point Karma does catch up with you and say, nope, Captain Pugwash, you are going down. And I think it might be this season. I hate it. Honestly, I can't stand it. Like, why would you play that? What's the point? Like, Fleetwood fans, I know you're going to dislike me for that, but what's the point? It's a terrible song.
Good evening, Ian, and hello, Sean. Yeah, big pressure for Morris to provide in the final third for Fleetwood. Completely agree. And for me, it's not going to be enough to score goals to keep them up. But
is it enough to outweigh the goal music? That's the thing. Even if he does play well, is it enough?
Graham, you're here on the third tier as our new signing for a bit of analytical stuff about football, not just about goal music. So, Matt, who have you got in that position, please?
I've got Fleetwood, but for slightly different reasons. I just think if you look back to that playoff team that they had end of 1920, it's just been ripped apart, hasn't it? There's very few that are left. The likes of Wes Burns have gone, and Paddy Madden have gone, Ched Evans have gone, Carl Vassell come in, didn't really do a job up front. They've lost their creative influences, haven't they? They've lost experience in the middle of the park. It's a change of manager. I know Simon Grayson used to be the go-to person in this league if you wanted to get promoted, but I'm not sure anymore. Graham's shaking his head horrified because of that Sunderland spell.
We
But
both
I just think
PTSD, mate.
you can be solid enough defensively, but at some point you're going to concede a goal, and if you're not scoring at the other end, it's going to cause you a problem. And I don't see, again, there's a theme in my bottom four, is I just don't see enough goals in that Fleetwood team that when they do go 1-0 down, I can't see enough quality and enough sort of creativity to get them out of trouble, and that's why I've got them in 22nd.
Yeah, I've gone for. Who have I gone for? I've gone Wimbledon, and I've put next to it, finally going to happen. Presley's from Brentford, isn't he? So I don't think he's a half decent player, but he's not going to be anywhere near as influential as what Piggott was. Half decent manager, young manager. But again, there's too much quality. Every time I put Wimbledon somewhere near mid-table, I kept dropping them down just purely for the fact that the quality and the experience around them, it's just going to be better than them. But they seem to defy the odds every year, and not nice for the fans necessarily, but good for the position to stay in League One. But for me, they're not going to have enough this season. Matt, who's going to occupy that last relegation space?
This one's probably slightly left field for a few. I know I've looked at other sort of predictions tables, listened to podcasts, but I've gone with Plymouth Argyle. I just think, again, I'm copy and pasting. I think Luke Jeffcoat was their top scorer last season with 16. He didn't really end the season that great. I don't think they won a game for the last 2.5 months of the season. Defensively, they were all over the show. If you stop Jeffcoat scoring, if you stop a couple of their other attacking influences, then they look a very ordinary side. Have they really upgraded in defence? I'm not sure they have. They've brought in James Wilson from Ipswich, sorry. There's a reason he's left Ipswich at the end of the day. So is he going to make Plymouth a lot better? I'm not entirely sure. And I just think...
What do you make of Dan Scarr from Walsall? I mean, Broom's a decent signing from Peterborough, but Scarr's a weird one, isn't it?
You're relying on someone stepping up, and like Graham mentioned with Dane Oliver for Jules last season, it can happen. But I just think there's a combination of factors. I don't think the squad's good enough. I think they got found out last season. They were too easy to play against. Defensively, I think they're susceptible to good sides, and there's plenty of good sides in this division. And Jeffcoat stopped scoring at the end of the season. So if you take his goals out, where would they have ended up? So again, I know it's me saying the same type of thing, but if you stop them from scoring defensively, I think you can get at them. And I just think they'll end up back in League Two.
I've gone for the exact same team. Me and Matt have the same bottom four, just in different order. Wasn't discussed before. We shared each other this morning, our teams, and but same bottom four for very similar reasons. And Graham, who have you got occupying that last spot?
Plymouth.
Oh wow! Fair enough.
That's great minds. We didn't actually. We genuinely didn't discuss that, did we?
Like I said, I just going down, mate. So
I just wrote teams down. To be fair, I wasn't on last week's show, so I'm sure they'll let me off. But Plymouth. Kind of what Matt said before. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't watch every team every week in League One because I'm watching Sunderland. But when I did see Plymouth towards the back end of last season, there was just something missing. But then I was kind of thinking, Ryan Lowe, obviously a very good manager, but they were just not very good last season from about March onwards, from what I've seen. I know they started relatively well, and I think when you've got a striker that can get you sort of 16 to 20 goals, which they do have, you shouldn't really be worried about it. But if his goals dry up, then I can't really look at them and say, Plymouth will be absolutely fine. And I know you went for AFC Wimbledon. We'll come on to it soon. But teams like AFC Wimbledon have a bit more experience over the past few years of staying up in this division. AFC Wimbledon, a bit like the old Sunderland of League One. What we used to be at the Premier League would just find a way at the end until we didn't, and then just kept getting relegated. But I just think Plymouth just don't have. They're a bit yo-yo-y anyway, aren't they? They kind of dip in and out, and I just think Plymouth were good half of last season, pretty bad towards the end, and sometimes the same momentum is really important in football, don't they? And I know there's been news and a lot of other things, but to be completely honest with you, it can get to a point where I think if you've had a bad end of the season and you lose a couple at the start of the season, you suddenly start going, oh, hang on, it's just not worked out well. And I see that maybe happening at Plymouth, but what do I know?
What do you know? Indeed, we'll see at the end of the season. My thought process, didn't really want to put Plymouth there. I don't mind Plymouth, but I just thought, is there a team that's going to be struggling? Will Ryan Lowe go? And then, move on to a better club and then even more in danger. So Plymouth, we've got occupying that last spot. Matt, who have you got in 20th?
I have got Michael Duff's Cheltenham. Now, I know they've not done a load in the transfer window so far. I think they've only bought in a couple, but they've not lost loads in terms of players that are in their first team. And I think there's just something about Cheltenham that says we haven't got to have a superstar. We haven't got to have a 20-goal a season striker. I know I sound a bit hypocritical now talking about Plymouth, but there's something about them that they all sort of know what their job is. They're all pulling in the same direction. There's going to be a degree of momentum because they come up as champions, so they're going to be absolutely riding the crest of a wave. I think Michael Duff's one of the most highly rated managers in the lower leagues, and I think they'll just have enough to stay above the dreaded line.
I've got the same as you. 20th, I've got Cheltenham. Similar reasons, but they've kept the core of last year. I don't think they've signed. They've got two. I think Bonds was coming from Hull, didn't he? But they got Toes and May. They've still got that creativity, and there was 3 players on sort of 10 goals last season. No superstar striker, but they're resilient. They're well organised, and I think they find ways to win. I think that long throw is going to cause teams danger, regardless of what league you're in. As sort of Man City found out, they gave them a good game for how many minutes it was. I appreciate Man City probably wasn't going all out, but they showed that they could sort of hurt teams no matter how good the quality is in front of them. And I think they'll add a couple as we speak now, but I think they'll have enough over those other teams to find ways to win and be better defensively. Over to you, Graham, for 20th.
Wimbledon. I just think they never really massively pull up any trees. I think they know what they are at the moment. I think that their project at the moment is probably to stay in this division until they can get a bit more money in and potentially look at pushing further the leagues. We all know their history, but Wimbledon just have a knack of staying up, and I think they've got there's something there between their fans and the players that they bring in that have this kind of ability to just get over the line. I don't think they'll pull up any trees. I think there'll probably be a point when you think, yeah, they might go, but relatively good friends with Ivor Heller there. So I'm going to do the opposite of what I did for Morecambe and not pee off anyone that's on the show or potentially on the show and say AFC Wimbledon will stay up, and I'll be pleased to see them stay up. I like a bit of Wimbledon. Who doesn't?
Okay, we're up to 19th now. Matt,
I have Morecambe. I think, yes, there's a big question mark over them losing their manager. Yes, there's a question mark over them losing 2 of their best players in Jan Songu and Mendes Gomez, who've gone to Bradford and Luton respectively. And I've probably been swayed by talking to Charlie and James last week. They were very bolshy, they were very ballsy. Charlie especially was, we're not coming into this division to make up the numbers. James talking about there's a positive way to be an underdog, a negative way to be an underdog, and I just got the feeling that if that's the vibe around the whole club, then there's something special in the making here, and I think they'll have enough to stay up just about. They've signed loads. I'm not going to try and name them. I think they've bought in about 12, 13, 14 players, but they've still got good players. And again, like Cheltenham, I think there's going to be that element of momentum because of such a good feeling. They're coming in as they're basically being written off, let's be honest, by everyone apart from people outside of Morecambe effectively. So they basically got a free swing every week, and I think they're going to surprise a few people. And yeah, I think they'll stay up.
I've gone with, I didn't want to put them there, but every time I've done this, I kept knocking them back down, and that's Shrewsbury. Sorry to set up cast. Sorry to Killy Shrew. I didn't really want to put them there, but I just think they haven't got enough in depth and enough quality to push on. I love Steve Cottrell. I'm so glad he's back on the touchline, and I want them to do a lot better. They've signed a few good players like Luke Leahy and a few others, but I think they're going to prove me wrong. But that's where they sit for my prediction. Graham, did you give yours? Sorry, I've gone a bit.
I didn't. Cheltenham. I think I had Ed Draper on my show just before they sort of got promoted, and he was talking up Mike Duff an awful lot, saying how great of a manager he is, how how young he is and how young and exciting he is. And I think when you speak to someone who lives around the area, supports the club and stuff like that, or is close to the club, you tend to get a bit more of a know-how about players, managers, and the feel around the club. And the feel around Cheltenham has seemingly been very good for quite a while. And I talked about momentum before with Plymouth in a negative fashion. I think Cheltenham haven't lost enough in comparison to Cambridge and Morecambe from the promoted sides. Obviously, we'll come on at Bolton at some point as well. But I don't think they've lost enough for that momentum to swing in the opposite direction. I don't think they're going to come in and go mad. I think they might do like a Lincoln, like they did a few years ago when Lincoln came in the league and kind of started really, really well, then had a bit of a wobble, but just kind of maintained that sort of 15th to 19th position. I think they might do that. I think if they lost Mike Duff, if they end up happening what happened to Lincoln and they lost, obviously at the time they lost their manager in their first season, if that happens, then that might be slightly different. But I just think momentum will keep them going enough. And if they will have a wobble at some point, every team does. But especially when you're promoted. But I don't see it being enough of a wobble for them to drop or get like even that close to it. So for me, 19th would be Cheltenham.
Okay, 18th, Matt.
This is the first one where I think they might be a little bit lower than they should be based on last season. They finished 12th last season. I like their manager, David Artell. I like the way they play. My only criticism last season, watching them twice in depth, obviously against the Gills, was do Crew have a plan B when the passing game gets found out and when you press and you force mistakes and you score against them? I'm not sure they had a plan B. My second concern is that they've lost some very good players from that team. They've lost, I know Omar Beckles has dropped down to League Two this season. He's probably not the biggest loss, but if you're looking at Perry and G, Harry Pickering, Ryan Wintle, they've all gone. Mika Mandron, Graham knows him, I know him. He's a decent target man, but he's not going to get you more than probably 10 goals in the league. He'll be involved in others, but I just think there's a couple of contributing factors now that sees me have to put them a bit lower, and that's why I've got them in 18th.
Okay, I've got them a little bit higher. Next I've got is Morecambe, one above where Matt's put them. And you know what? It is one of the reasons, but them being on the show last week gave me hope, and I'm not even a Morecambe fan, that their manager is the right person for the job. He runs everything really well drilled. Like the staff around the club were saying, they need a break from him because he's been so intense and he cares so much. His recruitment's been pretty decent. They've signed a lot of reasonable players for League One. Granted, I don't know his style, but he's used to a similar sized club in Scotland. I don't think he'll feel the pressure of being in League One. It's not the biggest league in the world, but it's certainly very competitive. But he's certainly going to have enough up his sleeve to keep Morecambe up. And that's the reason I've got Morecambe in 18th. 17th, Graham?
18th first.
Sorry.
Bolton. And I know this, I'm going to come at you again with a silly reason for Bolton, but that's kind of why I'm here, maybe. I just think Bolton need a boring season, don't they? Just a position that's just kind of pointless, isn't really close to relegation, isn't really close to promotion, isn't close to complete disaster. They could just do with a boring season, Bolton, I think, where just nothing really happens. And I think there's probably some kind of method in my madness for that. I think they probably will end up there. I think they'll probably be quite happy with the boring season, Bolton. Although, I mean, Bolton fans tell me otherwise. But I remember as a Sunderland fan, kind of yo-yoing a bit when I was younger, and then sort of playing well from March onwards and just staying up. And it was like we had one really boring season where we finished like 13th with a good bit in the middle. And it was just like, that was quite nice to be just in the middle and not worried about anything pretty much. And like the last 2 months of the season were like, just go out and get drunk and watch Sunderland play. I think Bolton need one of those seasons. They could finish higher, but I mean, I think they'll be quite happy with 18th. I know they're a big club, but I think they're still a promoted club at the end of the day. I'm not 100% sold on the manager. I know he recovered quite well after a poor start, and I know sometimes it's in how you react as opposed to how you begin. and I'm sure I'll get shut down by a few Bolton fans. And feel free to. You know a lot better your football club than I do. But I just think Bolton will just be fine. They'll just be smack bang the lower middle half.
They've made some decent signings. Bakayoko being one of them. Xavier from Hamburg's a really interesting one. I personally think they'll finish higher than I've put them as well. But I see what you mean. They need to sort of a year of stabilisation, don't they? But we'll see. They've got a good enough squad to maybe push up a little bit, but not quite enough in my opinion. But we'll come on to that a bit later. 17th, Matt?
Bolton. For pretty much the same reason, I think. And that's, Bolton fans aren't going to sit here and go, yeah, we'll be happy finishing 17th in League One. They want to get in the top 6. They're a big club. We know that. But I think deep down, they probably would say to themselves privately, we do need a season where we can just sort of just go under the radar somewhere in the middle of the road and just, like Graham's mentioned, not be fear of relegation, not have to worry about the pressure of anything at all. Just as a fan, be able to go and watch games. We'll win a fair amount, we'll probably draw a fair amount and lose a fair amount. Consolidate and then push on next season. They have made some decent signings. Bakayoko's probably going to play back up to Doyle, I'd have thought still. Everett, I think you have to give credit to the board last season because they made a horrendous start, didn't they? I think they was sort of bottom 8 and then won something ridiculous like 16 of their last 22 games to gate crash the top 3. So he clearly knows how to win games. He's then got to step up again now into League One and prove he can do it at the next level up. But yeah, I think they'll be fine. I don't think they'll be in any danger of slipping into the bottom 4 at any stage. But at the same time, I don't think they're really going to put any real pressure on the top positions either.
Fair enough. I've gone with Accrington. I had them lower, then higher, and then back down to lower again. I think they've made some cracking signings and they've got a resilient squad, but you also rely on the likes of Dion Charles repeating what he did last season and getting up to this high standards of the game. And if he doesn't do that, then they potentially won't have that sort of run they had last season. But the strength and depth last season hurt them. But yeah, they've got some exciting loan signings like Trafford from Man City, Coyle from Liverpool, Hardy from Liverpool, John O'Sullivan from Morecambe, I think is a quality signing. And they've got a bit of experience with Harry Pell as well they've brought in this season. So for me, they could have a much better season. They've got an incredible manager. But obviously they're not going to be in trouble. They could be a lot higher than I've put them. But for me, I think Accrington are going to be more than okay this season and potentially a lot higher than 17th. Graham, over to you.
Gillingham in 17th. Sorry, Matt. The reason being, I just think you've lost your best players. And I think if you'd kept hold of them players and you'd moved a bit further up, I think it's asking an awful lot of Verdan Oliver to have a season like he had last season. I think he's good, really good, but last season was like kind of unexpected, also miles better than expected. And I think people will know that a little bit more, like what he's like. People will target that. I think it's a little bit better when you've got Jordan Graham there. I think Jordan Graham going's massive. We spoke privately before, Matt. I think Jordan Graham's far better than this league, which I think will be proven. I think Gillingham could have egg on my face here because I think for a few years I've said, look, the outside tip for the playoffs. But I just think when you lose a player like Jordan Graham, it just makes such a difference. And for me, there's not enough being brought in, not just to replace that, just people that are just not as good as. And that's sometimes hard in League One. You'll sometimes lose a player and you just cannot bring in someone of that quality unless you suddenly get taken over by a billionaire and pay them stupid money and convince them to drop down from the Championship or something. And that's just not going to happen. I mean, you probably feel like that with Jordan Graham when you brought him in. He was probably brought in because of it. I think he had a few injuries. He was a bit out of form. That's sometimes what League One is. And when you get them back up to that level, suddenly they go away in a free Bosman transfer for a couple of £1,000 and you lose them and you kind of go, well, that was nice. I just think Gillingham might not struggle this season, but not be as good as they were last season because of that. I think they'll be nowhere near relegation. I think they might get to like March in like 11th or 12th. And then when there's realistically nothing to play for in the middle, sometimes you come up against teams that have got things to play for and you'll drop down a bit. So I feel bad because I want to say Gillingham first, more so than Sunderland for Matt. That's a lie. but 17th, Matt, I think. But I'd have no issue if you went further. Actually, no, I would, because that away stand, not having it.
Over to you, Matt, for 16th.
Accrington Stanley. Again, I think they could invest. I know Gabe Sutton, who writes for Bet Victor's got them in the playoffs, I think, and that was a huge shout. And Gabe probably knows more than all of us about League One, but I can't see them going that high. I think they got to a point last season, didn't they? And as soon as playoff talk started, they dropped off. Their squad's not the biggest, but John Coleman deserves loads of credit for what he does with them. You mentioned Dion Charles, Colby Bishop's another one that come in from like Conference North or somewhere, and he's got 12 in the last 2 seasons, so he's consistently double figures. Charles had a season of a lifetime last season. I think the biggest thing for me with Accrington is they've managed to keep hold of them two so far, so they're guaranteed probably 25 goals between the pair of them, which if everyone else chips in, they're likely going to get enough points to be safe. But I just think if they pick up a couple of injuries or suspensions, the squad's probably not deep enough. So that's why I've got them where they are.
They're going to have numbers, and they're going to have a better season than Morecambe, the likes of Morecambe in terms of numbers of their squad as well. They've got experience. They've got a really decent manager at League One. Couldn't agree more. They could be a team, like Gabe said, like they could push on. For me, it's not. They haven't got enough strength and depth of quality to keep in those playoffs with the teams around them this season. I've gone for Bolton. So me and you have got Accrington and Bolton just one above or below each other. We've gone through why. I think Everett got a little bit found out. Not say found out League Two, but that wobble, and then he had his head bit screwed on, and then they nearly messed it up by I think losing on to Exeter. Was it? Day before the last game of the season, then they went on to do the business and win on the last day to get promoted. So I think he's going to have enough, but he's going to find League One a bit more potentially of a struggle than he expected. And with the teams around them, they just have a bit more experience to win, and he'll use it as a learning curve and a comfortable season and push on potentially. Graham, 16th.
Crew. Similar reasons to Matt, really. I like the way they play, like the manager, like a lot of their players. I wouldn't mind a couple of them with Sunderland. We've been linked to 1 or 2 of them. Definitely my football manager team, but outside of playing nice, pretty football, when someone batters them like Gillingham often do to certain teams, that we did in the second half of the away game last season, about 2-2 with 2 late goals. I don't know whether they've got a plan B. I think they'll be fine, absolutely fine. But no, Crew 16th for me.
Okay, on to 15th, Matt.
I've got Doncaster Rovers. I just think there's a hangover from last season. I think they ended horrendously, didn't they? I mean, we were sitting here at Christmas. I think most people were talking about them as potential champions, potential top 2 candidates. And then Ben Whiteman left, Darren Moore left, the wheels fell off, rolled off the edge of a cliff, hit every branch on the way down and sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and they ended in a right state, didn't they? I think Andy Butler was sort of shoehorned into the job and wasn't up to it, and that's no disrespect to Andy Butler. He's since left the club completely, which is a sad way for him to end, because I know he's a bit of a legend at Doncaster Rovers. They've lost James Coppinger, he's retired. Richie Wellens is a good manager at this level. I think he probably shouldn't have taken the Salford job. He'd done a really good job at Swindon to get them promoted. But he won't be the first and he won't be the last to probably chase the dollar at the Sky Sports Fairy Tale Club. But I just don't think they've got enough quality all over the park to be anywhere other than probably lower mid-table at the moment. I don't think they score enough. Okanabire flatters to deceive a lot of the time. Who else have they bought in? Have they bought in Hawula, is it, I think? Portsmouth. He's another one. I would have taken him at Gillingham, I'm not going to lie. I think he's a good player, but he's not a 20-goal-a-season player. Omar Bogle, not a 20-goal-a-season player. Where's the creativity coming from now? I think Majid Gomez has gone. I know there was, talks of attitude, I think, and stuff like that, but Coppinger's retired.
They got
big rebuild.
Few good signings. Close from Pompey.
Portsmouth looks decent. Yeah, I'm not going to dispute that.
They got Matt Smith as well, didn't they?
Arsenal.
Yep.
I just think it's too big of a rebuild for them to be anywhere other than lower mid-table again at the moment. I could be proved wrong. Like you say, there's still a month or 3 weeks left in the transfer window. A couple of big signings makes all the difference, doesn't it? But for me, 15th.
Cool. I've gone with Crew. We're very similar around this area. For comments that have been mentioned before, they've got some decent players. Obviously, Owen Dale, Kirk, Lowry, Amandron. You've mentioned. I think they've got quite a lot of quality. But again, the teams that are going to be above them are going to have too much quality. I'd love for Crew to finish a lot higher. I've got a lot of respect for Crew. They do play football very well. It's just Matt said, are they going to find that plan B against teams that are dominating them and then putting the pressure on them? I'm not sure. But they're certainly going to have enough to stay up and potentially a little bit to kick on, but not enough power in the engine. Over to you, Graham, for your 15th.
This depends when the season ends. If it ends in March and we played on points per game, they'll finish top of the league. If not, and we play a normal season, Wycombe Wanderers. I just think I'm because I'm a Sunderland fan. I'm a bitter man. I don't like the fairy tale of Wycombe. It's not for me. I just think they'll come back down and turn back into a League One team. It'll be egg on my face when they get promoted in March on points per game, like I say, but I genuinely think that they'll just come back into this league and just be in it. They've got some decent players, to be fair to them, and there's a reason they got promoted. They've got decent players in different positions, and Daryl Hogan's good, who obviously they brought in from Hibs last season. But I just think Wycombe will just end up going back to being what Wycombe maybe used to be. I don't think they'll push the promotion spots. They're obviously not going to get anywhere near relegated. I think they'll just have a season in 15th. But Gareth Ainsworth will probably end up proving me wrong, and that'll be egg on my face, and this will be getting videoed and sent back to me, much like my predictions last season within a couple of years. But hey, that's the way it is, isn't it? That's life.
Fair enough. I've got Wycombe a lot higher than that. Spoiler alert. Matt, your 14th, please.
Shrewsbury.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of people saying that they're outside bets for the playoffs. I don't see it. I think Steve Cottrell's a very good manager. I think Aaron Wilbraham did a brilliant job. Sort of,
he deserves
keeping
a lot
the hot
of credit.
seat warm, didn't he, on the touchline last season while Steve was recovering in hospital and doing his job from afar. So, like you mentioned, I think it's great that Steve Cottrell, number one, is fit and well enough to be doing his job properly again and getting himself on the training ground. But I did an article a couple of weeks ago, didn't I, of signings to watch, and I think Ryan Bowman's an intriguing one. I think he's got a decent enough goal record at League Two level with Exeter. If he can replicate anywhere near that, then they might have a bit more cut and thrust in the final third. They brought in Elliot Bennett, who'll provide experience from Blackburn. Marco Morosi's a decent enough keeper from Coventry. But they're just not a team that excites me. You just look at their team and you don't think, "Oh, he's a very good player," or he's going to have a belting season, and for that reason, I think they'll be middle of the road. And I don't think that's a detriment to Shrewsbury at the moment. They've had a rough couple of years under Sam Ricketts, which was horrible to watch. They didn't score, they conceded too many. Steve Cotter will certainly keep them on the straight and narrow, and they won't be at any risk of the drop. But I don't see enough sort of attacking flair or stardust sprinkled across that squad to have them anything other than mid-table.
Yeah, I wanted to put them a lot higher. They've got some decent players.
About every single team so far.
No, not at all, man. I think
24 joint champions, you'd have.
Not at all, man. I think their team though, like I said, Lee, Pennington, Norburn, Vella, like you said, Bowman's interesting. They got Mark Pugh. Their team on paper, when they line up with Steve Cottrell sort of tactics and their organisation, they're going to cause some upsets next season. I just don't think they've got enough there to push on, and I want them to be better. But like you say, they're just uninspiring at some points.
That sounds like me supporting Sunderland. I want them to be better, but sometimes they're just uninspiring at points. I'm going to just use that for like a meme for Sunderland for the rest of the season. Thanks, bud.
Have we got 14th, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gone Doncaster for the reasons that Matt said. I think Wellens will take a season. They're in transition, and I do think with a good season behind him, maybe a few signs in January, they'll push on higher. But I think next season will be their year to really sort of push themselves and challenge once a few of the big boys are out of the league. But yeah, Doncaster for me. Won't repeat their signings, etc. You, Graham, 14th?
Accrington Stanley. They start well. They've got a good starting 11. They've got a good set of players. They've got a good manager for this level. They've got a very good recruitment, which I think is John Coleman, to be fair. But the squad's too small, and I think we see it time and time again. As soon as the playoffs get spoken about, like Matt said, kind of things happen where that doesn't happen. I think either that's mentality, or it could be just a case of a smaller squad, and that happens. It's a tough old slog, is League One, and I think you've got to have a really strong squad to get up in there around about the top 6. I think on top form, I actually think they're one of the much better sides in this league, but it's really hard to keep up that level of performance that we know Accrington can put in over a full season, and for that reason, I think they'll start well, maybe top 6 in the first couple of months, and then gradually drop down and find like that 14th position.
Cool. 13th, one below the top half of the table, Matt.
Burton Albion. I think Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank and Dino Maamria need loads of credit for what they did when they came in January, because Burton were gone by all intents and purposes. They were adrift. I think they'd won like 2 of their first 20 odd games. The football was awful. Defensively, they were all over the show. Their first game was at Gills and they won 1-0. But they got good players in. They basically built a squad, didn't they, in a 4-week transfer window, and from there on they was absolutely flying. And I think if you look at their form up to probably at least until the last 6 weeks of the season, they were top 4. Whether Hasselbank and Maamria can keep them doing that over a 46-game campaign remains to be seen. Teams will have worked out how to play against them. Pug Tom makes a really good point. I said on my preview video the other day that I think that League One could be the most interesting league in England to watch this season. I think it could be better than the Premier League, the Championship, League Two, National League, anything. I just think there's so many teams that think they should be in the top half. There's so many teams that think they should be in the top 6 that means that automatically there's going to be a lot of disappointed fan bases and chairmen and managers come May. But back to Burton. They've certainly been trusted in the transfer window, haven't they? Hasselbank and his assistant, his sidekick, they bought in probably double figures. My concern for them at the moment is they've bought in some attacking players and they've all got injured. I think Lewis Malt has come in and he's out for 5 months. He's torn hamstring or something. I've heard that Kane Hemmings, who was their top scorer last season, picked up a hamstring problem. So suddenly they look very blunt in attack, which is not ideal with 6 days to go until the start of the season. I like a couple of the defensive options. I like Deji Osalage and Tommy O'Connor. I know them from their time at Gills. I think Osalage gets a lot of undue criticism. I think he was very young when he was with us. He's gone and been club captain at Wimbledon. He's played 30, 40 games in the Championship. So he's obviously not a bad defender. Tommy O'Connor, an offer versatility. Johnny Smith, they've got good players. There's
like
a couple
Amari Patrick as well.
Yeah, there's another one. But it's how quickly will they gel when you bring in that amount? I know they did it in January, but, you know, once it tends to happen. I'm not sure it'll happen 2 windows in a row. But yeah, again, they'll be in no trouble at all. And I think they'll be like, similar to what we said about Bolton, they probably just need a nondescript, middle of the road, uninspiring, stress-free campaign.
Fair play. I've gone Gills. Yeah, I think a similar season, maybe start to shock a few. I like the business, obviously keeping Ollie Lee, Amers back, Lloyd from Tranmere is decent, but yeah, a bit with the embargo, you've signed reasonably well, enough to survive and be, you know, consistent enough in League One, but not enough to make any.
The embargo is over now.
I know that, but you weren't signed those players during the embargo. You're obviously looking at a few trialists, which are risky. You've said, would you take the punt on a couple of your trialists on your Twitter? And for me, there's no sort of signings that have gone, wow, that's the difference between last season. Already alluded to the fact that you've lost Graham, a couple of other players. Obviously, Gilvey's joined Portsmouth tonight. So for me, he's just not going to have enough to cause any upsets. But certainly with Steve Evans in charge, you're not going to be in any danger for that reason. Gillingham are in 13th. Graham, over to you.
Donny, I haven't got much more to add than what you've kind of put. I just think they probably got a little bit more than what you guys think, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were lower than this. But I think Donny's a good side. I quite like Donny. It's a good away day. I'll give him that. But a hangover from last season. I think Matt said it's really hard to disagree with that. And also adjust to obviously new management, new setup. I think they have a lot, and I think that's a lot to lose, especially at this level when you have a manager that you trust and you've got a project with. And Donny definitely have that. I think it's a lot to lose, and I think that takes time to recover from. And I think Doncaster will not necessarily playoff favourites anyway. I think they had a good run last season, and all of a sudden people sat up and took notice, and then they dropped off. So I think 13th. But if they go a bit higher, I wouldn't be too shocked. If they went a bit lower, I wouldn't be shocked with that either.
Okay, we're into the top half of the table. Start getting a bit interesting now. Who have you got in 12th, Matt?
Rotherham United, which might come as a surprise to a few. Perennial yo-yo club, aren't they? I think they've been promoted and relegated in and out of this division the last 6 years. But as we've already mentioned, I think this is probably the most open League One in a long time. There's plenty of clubs that think they're going to get promoted, get in the top 6. They've just not done enough in the window for me. That's the thing at the moment. I think their first 11's decent. They've got good players. They've got, plenty of experienced pros that have been involved in this squad. And Paul Warren's a decent manager. He don't get promoted 3 times out of this division without being, half decent. But they've lost their best player now in Matt Crooks. He's gone to Middlesbrough. Who they brought in really of note? Shane Ferguson. I think that's it. I know there's talk of about 3 or 4 coming in this week, but again, it's 3 or 4 days before the season starts. They're going to have no time to gel, no pre-season with the club. I think it'll affect them. But again, they could pull rabbits out of hats in the next few weeks and suddenly become contenders. But based on what I've seen in terms of the squad, the numbers in the squad, the lack of depth, and the fact that they've been inactive in the transfer window so far, says to me that they're going to be 12th.
Okay. I've gone for a shocker for most people, and I've gone with Pompey. Yeah, basing it a bit on last season, basing on the fact that others have signed a lot better around them. Others are already stronger than they were. They've lost a few players. They've signed reasonably well, likes of Clark Robinson, Ogilvie tonight, yeah, Williams. But Williams is what, like 34? Is he going to be that inspiring enough to drag them through this league? I'm not sure. Tunnicliffe, Freeman from Swansea, I think. But it's not enough for me to say, wow, they're going to really push on this season. And I think Cowley's already come out and said, we can't keep up. We're not spending as much money because it's damaged us in the past few years. And for that reason alone, I think all the others are going to be a lot stronger on the day. Or if they get a couple of suspensions, the teams above them are just going to have that experiential quality that's going to prove better than them. For that reason, Portsmouth are 12th. Graham?
Burton. I think Burton will have a good season this season. Key point for Burton, sometimes you have a manager that marries well with a football club. I think Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank's one of them. The fans obviously like him. He's obviously came back and started well. Sometimes when you come back the second time, you go, oh, is it going to always work the second time round? So far, it's worked really well. He's pulled them from, well, it was relegation, wasn't it? As Matt said, they were gone. They were absolutely gone. They've got a decent enough side. Yeah, they've got a few injuries, but I think momentum is so huge in this division because, let's be honest, the quality between every team here that we're speaking about is not that big. Not really, if we're completely honest. It's very few and far between, and that's why a lot of the seasons that Sunderland have been down here, the league's been really tight. I think it's because the quality is not that different, and 1 or 2 players can make that difference. But I think that's why momentum is so important, because if you've got the momentum to win 6-7 games in a row, and I think Burton will take that momentum from what they had last season and do really, really well. Do I think they've got enough quality to bother the top 10? Nah, I don't. But Burton have got, as a fan base and as a club, have a bit of experience of the league above this. So it's not like they're like these little minnows that did well at the end of the season. I think they've got a good bit of momentum behind them, a good manager in terms of their football club, and that marries well together. So I think they'll do quite well this season. But I think they're possibly a team to watch, actually.
Sweet. Matt, 11th.
Portsmouth. It didn't surprise me at all when you said 12th. I just think, again, it comes back to their signings are all right. I'm going to be biased, but I think Conor Ogle was probably their best addition of the entire window so far. Like you've said, Williams are given plenty of experience. Tunnicliffe are given plenty of experience, but are they past their peak? But Cowleys know their stuff, so I'm not going to sit here and say that they're a complete write-off and a no hope for a top 6. But again, from what I've seen in terms of their activity in the transfer window, how they finished last season, this is the thing, they missed out last season. And then if you look at that team, they've lost Craig McGillivray, was their keeper. They've lost Jack Mockmore, was one of their centre halves. They've lost Tom Naylor, played pretty much all the games centre midfield. Andy Cannon featured heavily. Ben Close and Ryan Williams were in and around the squad every week. John Marquis, I think, is key for me. If he was misused by Kenny Jackett, I think if you play him as a number 9, he'll score you 15, 20 league goals. If they keep Ronan Curtis, they've got half a chance as well. But the fact that they seem to be bringing in a lot of people on loan. They brought in Bazuma, is it the young keeper from Portsmouth, who was at Rochdale, highly rated, but is he ready to step up to League One? He played in a poor Rochdale side. I still think they've got a few holes in key positions, and they've not got a lot in behind what would probably be classed as the first choice at the moment. And I think it's going to be a transitional season for Portsmouth. So that's why I've had to put them 11th.
For reasons already named, so I won't take up too much time. I've gone with Burton. Think they might finish lower now. They're going to have half a season out with two of their main strikers. But I'm going to stick to my guns. I had them 11th, so I'll keep them 11th. But the injuries, if Hemmings is a hamstring as well as Mole, that's really bad for them, because there's a lot of goals they've lost. They do have a bit more creativity than others around them, but yeah, they're not. If they had, in my head, if they had Mole and Hemmings, and they weren't injured for 5 months, which is a hell of a long time, then they might have enough to push on a little bit, just because they did so well last year. But I think 11th is fairly fair. Graham?
Shrewsbury for 11th. Not a massive rhyme or reason behind that. Cartwell's decent at this level. Rubbish at Sunderland when he was assistant manager. Horrendous. Funnily bad. But obviously knows this division's done quite well. Obviously great to see him doing well and in fighting spirit, full health. I think they've got a decent side. I don't know whether it's as good as the side they had when they reached the check. Well, I call it the checker trade, whatever the pizza trophy's called these days, and got the playoff final. But I don't think they got too much to trouble the playoffs. But 11th, potentially top 10. I think they're one of they're a top 10-ish team for me, with a top 10-ish manager. If they start well, they could finish higher.
Sweet. Matt, 10th.
Jules.
Wow.
We finished 10th the last 2 seasons. I don't see any reason why we can't again. I know we've lost, Jack Bonham's gone to Stoke. I don't think that's a big loss. You can find keepers pretty much wherever you look in League One. And I think we've got 2 decent ones. Aaron Chapman won League Two with Accrington a couple of seasons back. Lost his way a bit, but he's a decent keeper still at this level. He's played for Steve Evans, and Jamie Cummings, really highly rated, coming in from Chelsea, and kept 18 clean sheets in about 40 games for Steve in his last season. So I don't think we're going to miss Jack Bonham. Max Amar coming back is key for me. That's experience at centre half, which we lacked in the first half of last season. Reece Bennett as well, I think, is a really clever signing. Jordan Graham's a huge miss, we know that, and so is Connor Ogleby. But for me, we've still got probably 6, 7 or 8 players that were first teamers throughout all of last season. We've got Stuart O'Keefe from the off, which we didn't have last year. So I think there's enough within the squad in terms of know-how and experience, and those that were playing together predominantly for the majority of last season. That means we'll be 10th again.
Okay, I've gone tin hat on, and I'm not going to change it. And I've thought about it all day, and I've dare I say it again, I think they'll do a lot better. But I've predicted a season of a wobble and a bit of consistency for Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah, I think with a bit of uncertainty, but they've signed exceptionally well. And if they keep Bannon, I think they could fly up the league. But 10th for me, just because of how I think the other teams around them is going to go. But they signed another 2 players today, who they brought in, made some notes. If they keep Bannon, that I've already said. But Brown's a decent. Hunt gives brilliant experience at centre back, and he was already being sniffed around by the clubs like Blackpool. Peacock Farrell, superb. Lewis Wing got a loan from Wolves today as well. So I don't know, their squad is very decent, but for me, just with the uncertainty and everything being settled in that club, they're going to finish 10th. But it wouldn't shock me if they're anywhere near even top 2. But I'm going to stick with 10th because that's where I predicted them. Graham?
I might shock and upset a few people here, but Wigan, I think everyone's going mad about their signings, but their main signings are Charlie White, who I know everyone keeps telling us he scored 31 goals, but look at the reaction of Sunderland's fan base to the fact that Charlie White went. I'm not saying he didn't have a good season, but he was very much a meh player. Max Power, really lovely lad, really nice guy, but he infuriated the hell out of me for the best part of 3.5 seasons or whatever he was here. Like, really, really infuriated me because he just lacked that little bit of quality for me for us to get up. the link to Jordan Jones on loan today. He'll probably have 3 outstanding games and go off the boil. He's a typical winger based on what I've seen at Sunderland and what I've seen at Rangers. I just think they've signed big name players. I don't know whether they've signed players that, in my personal opinion, will catapult them into like first in the league. Obviously, they're going to hammer us on Saturday, egg on my face again. But if you're asking me here and now, I think the players that they've signed are just, if Sunderland signed them, would I think we would win the league? No. So why should I think Wigan would win the league?
Fair enough. 9th, Matt.
Sheffield Wednesday. Similar reasons to yourself. If they keep Bannon, if they can keep Josh Windass, then they could invariably, be genuine promotion contenders. But there's still a long time to go in the window. I think their signings are decent enough. They need lots more still, though, don't they? They lost plenty in the summer because of all the off-the-field activities.
Rightly so. A lot of money.
Yeah. But yeah, Darren Moore knows this division inside out, and he's a very good manager. And I think they'll be absolutely fine, and potentially with a few more signings. And if they can keep, I think Barry Bannon could almost be like an Aidan McGeady type figure for them. I just think he's that good, and he's championship level, isn't he?
Did you see his tackle yesterday?
I haven't. No.
I'll post it on the Twitter later, just for reference, for context. But it's a joke. He runs from the halfway line. Striker's clean through, and he somehow manages to catch him up and tackle him from behind to stop a certain goal. So, superb player, and as you say, levels above League One, and arguably the best midfielder in the league. Sorry, Graham. I've gone for Oxford. Signed Jordan Forney last night to replace Rob Atkinson. I think Atkinson going from Oxford to a Bristol City side, which is defensively uncertain. I know we're a League One pod, but it's weird for him because he would have settled into a much more stable side, not one that's potentially going to be fighting relegation. But 1.5 million is no fee for a defender of that quality. Experienced, signed reasonably well, and will have enough to be there or thereabouts. But for me, 9th, just because the teams around him have signed better, and I think we'll do better. Graham, 9th.
MK Dons. I know they've obviously Russell Martin's away, but I don't think this narrative that Russell Martin's created this like amazing team, and he's a huge loss to MK Dons. I don't think it's necessarily true. It wasn't a Russell Martin revolution. He got him to 13th and played nice football. It was a project, definitely, and I think they would have been better off keeping it. But I think you can lose Russell Martin and continue that project. They've signed very, very well. I think, potentially, because it might take them a little while to get back into their rhythm, because they've lost their manager so close to the season, that's maybe why they'll finish 9th. But I think MK Dons will do as well as some people think, if not slightly better this season, because they have signed really, really well. They're the only side I've really looked at, in contrast to Wigan. I've looked at some of their signings and gone, I wish we'd brought them in. I think he might have done a job. And you tend not to do that too often at League level for me. I honestly don't think losing Russell Martin's going to be as big as some people think it is. I think he was part of a project. I don't think he necessarily was the man that they needed to continue that project. I don't think he'd created an entire revolution by getting them to 13th in League One. I think they've signed well. I think if they make a good appointment, obviously, if they bring in Simon Grayson or something, then there's problems, obviously. But if they make a good appointment, then they should be fine. But the loss of the manager so close to the season might affect them a little bit and means that they might not get playoffs, but they'll be there or thereabouts, I think.
I think that's fair. Matt, 8th.
Lincoln City. I just think they lost a lot of people from last season that were very, very pivotal in how well they did. I've just got the slight feeling with Lincoln that was their chance. That was their real chance to get promoted into the Championship. They relied on a lot of lone stars, didn't they? The keeper, who's gone back, was it? Forgot his name. Palmer.
They've signed the next
Brom,
keeper from West Brom.
Griffiths, they've signed from West Brom to replace him, but is he at the same level? I'm not so sure. The young fullback's gone back to Tottenham, but there's talk he might be coming back, so that's one to keep an eye on. George Grant's obviously massive, huge miss in the middle.
Was he honestly as good as everybody says? A lot of goals from the penalty spot.
Whether he's that as good, but like I said on my video, 14 goals, whether they're from the penalty spot or 45
No.
yards, it's 14 goals, isn't it? So they've
Get
got
it,
to
get
replace
it.
14 goals. The two wide lads, they're going to be difficult to replace, Rodgers and Johnson. I have my own opinions on Brennan Johnson, but he's clearly a good player. Tom Hopper won't score enough goals for him to be a top six side for me. Chris Maguire's a good player. I think he'll come in and do well. He's worked well under Appleton before. Adela Coombs the interesting one for me because he was very good for Scunthorpe at League Two level. Then he went to Bristol City probably too early. He's had sort of small spells with Hull and Rotherham, I think, at this level where he's been really good, but only sort of over a month or two. So if he can turn it on for a season, then they probably won't miss Johnson and or Rodgers so much. But I just think there's a few question marks over key areas in that team, and the people that they've lost who've gone back to their parent clubs are going to be very tricky to replace. So I think they'll just miss out on the playoffs.
Okay. I'm in disagreement with you, Graham. I had MK Dons potentially top two, maybe 3 or 4. I've now got them 8th. Their signings aren't just good; they are fantastic for League One. Twine, Martin, Robson, Waters, which incredible
Troy
striker. Parrott, yeah, Moisa, which I think have a phenomenal season. Don't know too much about Watson, but combined with the team they had, I know they've lost Fraser, but I think Twine is still going to be a very creative asset for them. Now, they have the ability clearly on paper to do extremely well, but I think there is going to be that maybe 10, 12 games where they're getting settled, depending who they bring in. But it isn't just them finishing 13th, it's them finishing as good as they did on the back end of last season. And they had that good of form that they were pushing playoffs quite comfortably. So he would have, in my opinion, carried on that momentum, and he was building a squad that he wanted. I'm not going to talk about loyalty or, turncoats and stuff when it comes to MK Dons and Wimbledon, etc. But
Scumbag.
ultimately, Russell Martin was doing a very, very good job at building a very, very good side that arguably was good enough to finish in the top 3. And that loss for them, regardless of how many fans think it won't be, for me, and just in my opinion, will be too much for them to get into the playoffs.
I think it might be like a Lincoln a few years ago when they lost to Cowleys and went into Appleton, but I think they will come back if they make the right appointment, which I think they will.
Agreed.
So I'm totally in agreement with you on that, mate. Was it my go next?
Yes, 8th, mate.
Really short and sweet on this one, Rotherham, because they had to be put in somewhere, and Rotherham are not, like, as Matt said, they've not signed anyone amazing. They've lost their best player, but they've still got a decent squad. I think there's better teams than them. I could be wrong because they've got a knacker going up. They've also got a knacker coming down. But 8th, I think 8th.
One outside of the playoffs, Matthew.
Sunderland.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
First swear word alert.
Explicit.
Sunderland until I die. Series 5.
Sun until I died.
And then he did, and they were still in League One. Again, it comes back to what we've just said about George Grant. Regardless of what you think of performances, you've got to suddenly fill a void of 25, 30 goals in Charlie White going. Whether he's as good for Wigan as he was for Sunderland because there's no Aidan McGeady remains to be seen. But that doesn't affect Sunderland. What he does for Wigan, what affects Sunderland now is they've got to replace a vast volume of goals from last season, and they still didn't get promoted. The keeper worries me. I'm not sure how Lee Johnson thinks that Lee Burge is number 1. He's always got a calamity in him. I remember our game against you last season, Graham, where he come airing out of his 6-yard box in the last minute and made it so easy for Jordan Grant to run round him and tap it into an empty net. So if you've got a keeper doing that, then it doesn't fill your back four with confidence. There's gaps to be filled.
In the playoffs, though.
Yeah, he was good in the playoffs, yeah. Luke O'Nien, they've said, is going to play centre midfield, but then that means you need to buy a right back. I like Callum Doyle. He looks unbelievable for 17 years of age.
Yeah,
proper ball playing centre half, proper modern day centre back, but it's asking a lot for a 17-year-old to go 46 games through a season and help you get promoted. Alex Pritchard has done nothing for a couple of years, but dropping down to League One might help him out and he might rediscover his mojo, but there's a big if over that. Corey Evans looks a solid signing, but again, I look at Sunderland at the moment and I think if you take McGeady out of it, they look quite an average team in League One. And we've seen the chairman come in and he's got all this money, but I've not seen any evidence. And I'm not saying he should be splashing the cash for the sake of it, don't get me wrong, but I've not seen any evidence to see that the new owners making Sunderland look a better football team at the moment than they were. And then you've got the Lee Johnson effect. And I mentioned this on my preview, and that's that streaky Lee that, we spoke about it on this very pod that Graham's alluded to, and he mentioned we're getting promoted automatically, and then didn't win for 8 games. So, and he's never been promoted, has he? I don't think, Lee Johnson.
Nope.
So there's just too many big question marks over Sunderland for me at the moment to be able to put them in the top 6. But again, like I've said so many times, that they could go and sign 3 or 4 really good League One players in the next few weeks, and suddenly they look like automatic contenders. So time will tell. But as it currently stands, I've got them just missing out.
As we speak now, I have the exact same position for Sunderland for the exact same reasons. And I just genuinely don't think Lee Johnson is good enough to manage Sunderland. And you just need some better signings to improve on the team you had last year. Now, White for me isn't always going to be that goal scorer, but at the same time, Matt's completely spot on. You take that many goals out of a team, a la Cambridge, a la whoever, whatever you're trying to achieve, you're not going to then repeat it unless you sign someone who's going to score that many goals again.
Could Ross Stewart replace that though?
I'm not going to put a bet on Ross,
but it's a huge ask. It's guaranteed.
As Matt said,
scored no more than probably 5 goals last season. Any of the people that could play as your number 9 this season,
and for that reason alone, I just don't think there's enough there to say you were the same as last season. However, I did have you in the playoffs for about 4 or 5 of my tables. So just sitting outside is probably right because you're 2 or 3 signings away from causing, some not upsets, but putting yourself probably where you've been for the last few years. But first time I ever predicted Sunderland to be outside the playoffs in League One. Who have you gone with 7th, Graham?
Portsmouth, because they love League One, and they want to stay here. I think they actually really like League One, so I think they'll end up just staying here and just miss out like they did last season. Be televised at Fortress Fratton, and they'll lose on the last game of the season. Don't even know if they're at home the last game of the season, but let's pretend they are. And I think they'll just miss out. I just don't think they've brought in enough, and I think they've lost a fair few players with experience. They brought in some decent players, but not like players that make you think, well, they're going to definitely improve on 7th. So Portsmouth for me.
Quick question. Is McGeady really that good? Had him at Wednesday and he was bang average.
Yes, Dan, he is. Next question.
Totally agree. He is, especially at this level, he is that good.
It's a cheat code. I questioned it and then he skinned 3 of Blackpool's players and tried to curl one in, just hit the post. But yeah, he's phenomenal. We have the playoffs now. Matt, some people already might know who you've got from watching your videos, but please enlighten us with who you've got 6th.
Wigan Athletic. I think Liam Richardson's done a really good job in the most difficult of circumstances just to keep them up. My only question mark is whether he handles the different type of pressure, which could come with a potential promotion push. But there's nothing I've seen from him so far that indicates that he won't handle it. I disagree with Graham. I think they've bought really well. I think they've strengthened in key areas where they need to. If you look at their squad now, they've got 2 decent enough keepers at this level. They've got Jamie Jones, and then they bought in Ben Amos, who was Charlton's number 1. Jack Watmore comes in to strengthen that back 4. They've bought in Tom Naylor from Portsmouth in the middle of the park, Max Power, who has been at Wigan before and done really well. So I think there's a sense of unfinished business with Max Power. They've got goals in that side as well now. They've got probably 4 strikers that they can call upon. They bought in Humphreys for a fee. That's the only fee they've paid. I have to make sure that I say that so I don't get in any more trouble with the fan base. They bought in Charlie White for the most minimal wages.
Couple of K a week, I heard, mate.
They've got Callum Lang and Will Keane on the bench. I like Joe Dodo. I think he's an exciting player. Gavin Massey's done it at this level before. I think Solomon Otterbour's decent. Gwion Edwards coming from Ipswich will give them width. I think they've got all the bases covered as long as their manager handles the pressure of a potential promotion push, and I think he will. And that's the reason I've had them. And they're bloody good at getting out of this division, let's be honest. It's only 3 years ago I think they won it, so 6th place for Wigan for me.
6th place. I had this team second a couple of times, but I made my final decision. I've gone with Wickham. I love Gary Harrisworth. I think their squad is decent. They've got a player for every position and a backup. They've got Sam Vokes, I think, regardless of the last 2 seasons being desperately cart horsey. I think if he drops down to League One, finds some fitness with deliveries from Joe Jacobson, Scowen, Pendlebury in midfield, I think they're going to score goals. And
they signed Josh Scowen, didn't they? Forgot about that.
They're going to have enough to finish higher, but I have them 6th because I think the others above them in my league can do better. Graham?
Oxford, good squad. Depending on whether you're talking about fights in the tunnel or on the pitch, like, because I heard they haven't got that good of a squad.
You are bitter, aren't you? You are
battles. I just hate League One, mate. What he says on the Third Tier podcast. No, I think Oxford are decent. Like, I think I tipped them to win the league last season, and then they had that bad start, didn't they? But I think Cole Robinson is quite good at this level. He does get into people's skin, that I've just kind of alluded to, which just kind of
months later.
Yeah, which kind of works, doesn't it? But I think they're a decent side, Oxford. I wouldn't be surprised if they finished a bit higher, but I had to put people in positions and decide. And I think there's a few teams with a maybe slightly stronger squad. But if Oxford have a better start than they did last season, there's no reason why they couldn't finish higher than 6. But I think they'll get in the playoffs in some way, shape, size, or form. They always tend to, don't they? So
unless they're facing the mighty Blackpool. Jules in the blood, we have 5th place.
That threw me. Just called me Matt for every single position.
I know. That's because I was reading your little tag.
MK Dons. I think. What's Russell Martin done over the last couple of days? And then I've seen him mentioned on Twitter a couple of times. Oh dear.
Did you see his picture?
The one that was on Instagram, apparently.
I'm trying to
see that got retweeted by a few angry MK Dons faithful today. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? He's a good manager at this level, and he's built a very good squad. But yeah, he's not won anything. So whoever walks into this job, if they've got anything about them in terms of managerial ability, he's got probably one of the best squads, if not the best squad to work with.
Look at him.
What an absolute geezer.
His shithoused his way into Swansea with a week to go, and he's just smiling like that.
I think Jack Grealish's dad, that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jack Grealish's dad. Their signings are really good, aren't they? They've got strength all over the park. I think Moise is an incredible signing at this level. I know he's not scored loads in the last 2 seasons, but you have to look at who he's been playing second fiddle to for the last 2 years. Ivan Toney's now in the Premier League, and Johnson Clark-Harris scored 30 goals and got himself into the Championship, and he still managed to get 8 or 9 in the league in 2 seasons playing from the right wing. Scott Fraser will be a miss, but Scott Twine's a good player. I'm not sure he's quite as good as Fraser yet, but he's still a very good player at this level. He was decent for Swindon, decent for Newport, I think, before that. Josh McCracken's just signed a new deal. They're just, and we just laughed about that Russell Mott. They're just a very good-looking football team, aren't they? They've got very nice footballers, very good footballers that, are very easy on the eye. And I made a joke last season when we beat them 3-2. They opened the scoring and we didn't touch the ball for about 3.5 weeks, but we beat them 3-2. And it comes back to the old saying about there's more than one way to skin a cat. But I think regardless of who they bring in, unless it's a complete idiot, they're going to be there or thereabouts because the recruitment on paper at the very least looks very, very good. Jody Morris predicted to be the new manager. There we go. Martin has just mentioned. So he's been looking out for a job, hasn't he? I think he was assistant to Frank Lampard. So he wants to sort of go out on his own. That could be an interesting appointment. Certainly likes to play the right way. But yeah, whoever it is, I think they've certainly got enough within their squad to be a threat at the top end of the table.
Graham, a few points on why you've chosen this team at 5th.
Ipswich signed well. I don't think they can be as bad as they've been the past few seasons. I think Paul Cook's a good manager. He has a brilliant way to change his voice mid-interview, which is
phenomenal.
I mean, they'll probably win the league actually because of that. Because that's very, very good. If you can change his voice, you can change your team's fortunes, I suppose. On a serious note, which obviously I've not been very good at during the show, I just think they signed quite well, and I don't think they can be as bad. Everything's got to turn eventually. I know that sounds ironic coming from a Sunderland fan, but I think Ipswich are a big club. Historically, they're not in this division. They're historically a good championship team. I think they've made a decent enough appointment last season in Paul Cook. I think Paul Lambert was the worst man on the planet. So dour and just not what you needed for turning a vehicle around. Paul Cook on the opposite side, we've been laughing about him within minutes of mentioning him. So for me, a nice voice-changing manager, good signings, can't be as bad as they have been the past couple of seasons. I think Ipswich might actually go on and win the playoffs, but I think they'll finish in 5th.
Did I give my 5th? I didn't, did I?
No.
Wigan, because they've signed exceptionally well, and I think Liam Richardson's going to be one of the best managers next season. As Matt pointed out, their signings are phenomenal. They're going to score goals. They've got a beautiful kit. They've got new owners, and I think they're just going to really be consistent this year and probably be in around the playoffs for most of that time. So, Matt,
why don't you just marry them then, Tom?
Because I'm a tangerine. We know how to win the playoffs, unlike some. Matt.
Fourth is a team that Graham had a lot lower. I've gone for Gareth Ainsworth's Wycombe Wanderers. I think they've got the majority of the squad that got them out of this division a couple of years ago. They've got the majority of the squad that nearly kept them in the championship against the odds. They've lost a couple of key players. Ipiezu's gone to Middlesbrough and Anya Dimna's gone to Luton. But I think they've signed very well to replace him. I think Sam Vokes could prove to be a very clever signing at this level. He's lost his way in the last few seasons, but dropping down to League One, I think he's comfortably going to get double figures if he plays enough. And Sully Kaikai, I'd have had him at Gills, a drop of a hat. I think he's a very good player at this level. He can play a couple of positions. He can play wide. He can potentially play in the 10. So I think that fills the void left by Anya Dimna. And I just think that in Gareth Ainsworth, they've got one of the best and probably one of the most rock star managers in League One. Probably the most rock star manager in League One. So yeah, I think they've got all the ingredients they need to have a really good go.
Big Slipknot fan is Gareth Ainsworth.
Yeah,
probably.
Probably. Fourth, I have Lincoln purely for the fact that I was initially quite worried about their position. Mid-table-esque, I think, Graham, you had a mid-table, didn't you? Or someone did. But they've actually come out the last week or so and signed really well. Obviously, Teddy Bishop I really like. Griffiths is going to replace Palmer. Like you said, he might not be to the same level, but they come from good stock at West Brom. Maguire, and they've got some exciting, I think, Farini, I don't know too much about. I've done a bit of research on him once. I heard the NT D3, D4 talk about him, and he just said he looked one of the most exciting prospects, and it could be one of the most under the radar signings. So we'll have to see how Lincoln do. But Appleton uses and utilises the loan market extremely well. He knows how to win games. And for me, they will still be there or thereabouts, and they won't have the curse of finishing 5th because no team gets promoted if they finish 5th. Graham?
Sunderland. We've got no fullbacks, but who needs fullbacks to get in the 4th position? We don't need them. We don't need him. We just play Carl Winchester at right back and Daniel at left back.
I was going to say, you didn't have fullbacks for most of last season, did you?
Surely, I mean, well,
Gareth Southgate, you put Rashford at wing back, so you can just put McGeady there as a first.
Callum McFadden was a questionable fullback, although he does go down as a fullback. Sorry, Crew fans. But I'm sure we'll bring someone in. God, please bring a fullback in. But going further forward, in pre-season, we've actually looked weirdly okay. We've beat Hearts, we've beat Hull. So obviously that means we're better than Celtic. Because Hearts beat Celtic the other day, so obviously we're going to go into Europe via that backwards passage, I think. But McGeady, Embleton, I've got to have some kind of hope, Tom. Jesus Christ. McGeady, in my opinion, biased opinion, best player in the league. Most talented anyway on his day. Embleton's been really good, making me eat my words. I wasn't sure he was that good. He's been good in pre-season. Ross Stewart has looked like he'll bring more to the side than Charlie White will. Charlie White was a bit statuesque at times, put the ball in his head. Obviously, he scored goals last season, but Ross Stewart runs the channels a bit better. Corey Evans, if he doesn't get injured, should do all right. I think every position apart from the fullback positions and the squad depth is quite good. And I think some of the players we've got near the top are really, really good, as in McGeady and Embleton's obviously should be on the crest of a wave from getting promoted with Blackpool. So I think we'll be there or thereabouts, but just it's very Sunderland to finish fourth, isn't it?
Well,
and then losing the playoffs.
It's going to be a very decent feat, in my opinion, with the current team you have. We're into third now, aren't we, Matt?
Oxford, I think they've lost minimal players again. At our level, you always tend to lose one or two each season. They lost, Rob Dickie last season. They took a while to replace him, didn't they, with Atkinson? But they've lost Atkinson to Bristol City, that you've already said. But they brought in Jordan Thorneely on loan from Blackpool. So he wasn't first choice for Blackpool last season. I understand that, but he's a decent enough player at this level. You'd be able to tell me more. I think Steve Seddon's an upgrade on Josh Ruffles, who's left. I think he's been very good for Portsmouth and Wimbledon in this division in recent seasons. And then the rest of their squad is as is. Sam Long's probably one of the best right fullbacks. They've got James Henry, who creates. They've got good players in the middle of the park. Brannigan.
Brannigan's so good.
They've got Matty Taylor will score your goals. So they just tick a lot of boxes, and Carl Robinson knows how to get into the playoffs. The one thing that got levelled at him last season was playing teams in and around him. He sorts that out, he could get top two. But for me, at the moment, I think they're a very strong bet to be in the playoffs for the third consecutive season, Oxford United.
I have, and just missing out on automatic, Charlton. Very tempting to put them in second. They're in third. I think they just have a very good season. Wouldn't surprise me if they finish top, second or third, but I think they'll be there or thereabouts. They've got quality in depth. They haven't lost many players, and they've signed reasonably well. They've got an incredible manager. The Valley is going to be rocking next season if they get off to a good start. You've got Dobson from Sunderland. Stockley, they've got on a permanent. McGilvery, one of the best goalkeepers. Sean Clare from Oxford as well. They've signed good quality to make them much better. And there was at points last season where they looked incredible. Obviously, they went on that horrific run with Bowyer at home, not winning in 8 or 9, a new club record. But they were also in the playoffs at that point, and they just, free fell. So they're going to do enough for me under a better manager with fans back. Third, Graham?
Chef Wed, because I forgot about them. And I got a third, and I thought, well, they'll fit in really well. Because Barry Bannon's good at tackling, so Chef Wed, yeah.
Fair play. That's some great analysis here on the third tier.
That's what I get. That's why you signed me up, man.
That's it. That's why you only cost a Snickers bar.
Right.
I'm
not getting an agent's fee here, am
I? Matt, who have you got for autos for the eagle-eared? Eagle-eared? Is that a phrase? I don't know.
It can be now.
They've got ears, but I don't know where they're placed, because if you think they've got like that kind of bald-headed shaped head.
Matt, who have you got second, mate?
Charlton Athletic. Like you've just said, they've signed really well. They've upgraded in the goalkeeping department. McGillivray's probably top 3 in terms of keepers at this level. Sean Clare, going back to his first club, I think would have a point to prove. Jayden Stockley, they get for a whole season. He was very good last season when he arrived on loan. They've got good options in midfield. I think they've still got Connor Washington, who's a good option up top in attacking areas. They've still got experience, but they've managed to move on some of the more veteran ones, like Darren Prattley. They've moved on, but they've still got experience. I think Chris Gunter's still there, and Nigel Atkins is a serial promotion winner from League One. He's done it with Southampton, hasn't he? I think he's done it with Hull, and you just can't not like him, can you? I mean, we all follow his videos on Twitter every morning out for his walk and telling us all to have a nice day. And you just can't help but feel in a bit of a better mood once you've listened to Nigel Atkins for a minute and a half. So I'd imagine his team talks are lovely. You could probably be 7-0 down and he'd still give you a cuddle.
I don't think so. I think he's got a really.
They've signed well. Who's the other lad they got back in from Norwich on loan for the season? Is it Firmino or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, Akin for Moino or something.
That's it. Yeah, horrendous debut for Atkins, didn't he last?
If they've signed Firmino, they'll do really well.
I think I'm not sure it's him.
A different one. Fair enough.
Slightly different spelling.
Yeah, I think they've got enough. And the Nigel.
You say potato, I say potato. You know, so
exactly that. We'll see.
I've gone for the eagle-eared of you. I've gone for Rotherham. Maybe
you can't hear you saying that though. If he's got an eagle ear, can't hear you saying that covered.
I think their team last year, it's going to sound really ironic, because they went down. They sometimes were hard to beat. They didn't score enough goals and face the consequence for that. And I think if they scored enough goals, they would have come to people in mid-table. But they, like I said, they faced the consequences for that. But their team on paper, with a few more additions, is still going to be phenomenal for League One. They've got a very decent goalkeeper in Vickers and Johansson. They've got Ladapo, Smith, Shane Ferguson. And they've just got a very decent core of their team. And I don't think many teams will walk over them next season. And I think they're going to do enough to win games at League One. I think they'll be very consistent. They've got a phenomenal manager. They know what it takes to go up. They're going to be well drilled, very fit. Their fitness comes into it massively. Blackpool found that out last season when they kept going towards the end of matches and just passed the ball to see games out. And I see them doing that, and I see them doing it very well. So for that reason, I've got Rotherham finishing second. Graham?
Charlton, because Charlton always do something to ruin Sunderland's season. Nigel Atkins
always leads back to Sunderland.
Of course it does. We're the only team that really matters. I think Nigel Atkins is a nice fella. And you know what? As much as Charlton have ruined my life for the best part of 3 decades, they're quite nice fans as well. And they've signed well, that one as well. Probably the most important one. I think it's a silly set of reasons, but I'm similar opinion as Matt. So there's got to be some kind of method in my madness there. I think Charlton will go up. Got experience of doing it. Decent manager. Decent squad. Yeah, why not?
Champions, Matt.
The voice changes. Ipswich Town for me. I think their transfer business has been very, very good on paper, at least. Obviously, we'll only know when we start seeing them play. But I backed them to get in the playoffs last season, didn't I? When we was doing this podcast, and I looked like an idiot because I don't think they scored for about 7 games on the
when Paul could come in, we were all a bit excited about what they potentially could do. I think he just resigned himself to the fact that he was just seeing it out, and then just
they were a bit more crap than we probably gave them credit for. Yeah, they're certainly not going to lack in goals this season. I mean, they've got James Norwood, they've got Caden Jackson, they've brought in Macaulay Bonne, they've brought in Joe Pigott, they brought in Wes Burns to provide. The one that stands out for me in terms of being intriguing is Raheem Harper, who was really highly rated as a young kid and nearly went to Juventus, I think. And it'd be interesting to see how he goes now. Bit older, only 19 still, though, I think, and he's going to get regular games, you would think. They've shifted out a lot of Deadwood, haven't they? I think they've all gone to Colchester, the retirement home for Ipswich players. I think Scouse and Chambers and Judge and Sears have all gone there. They've strengthened the goalkeeper department. They've now got 2 Czech keepers, haven't they? They've got Thomas Holy, the ex-Jules keeper, and they've now got, Vaclav, how do you pronounce it?
Hladky,
something like that, yeah. Lee Evans provide experience. Again, George Edmondson's come in, centre-half, ball-playing, defender.
Joke signing.
It's hard to find chinks in the armour at the moment, to be quite frank. And Paul Cook, again, serial promotion winner, Chesterfield, Portsmouth, Wigan. Can't look past them.
Nope. And yes, that is that exact reason I have Ipswich to win. I think Burns is probably the most underwhelming of them all, and it's still a very good signing. But Pigott for me is top draw. I think in a team with better players around him, if he starts, of course, because they've got an abundance of strikers now. One player you forgot to mention was Chaplin from Barnsley. Not only did they have all those players, but they had a Chaplin to it as well after Edmondson signed. And I think not only are their signings League One quality, their Championship quality. Edmondson's just a joke for League One. Harper's phenomenal for League One. Piggott is.
I forgot to mention Fraser. I think
Fraser is 14 goals, 6 assists last season, and is going to have again better players around him. And there's rumours that they're nowhere near finished yet, maybe 2 or 3 more to come. So it's going to be frightening. The only thing is, will they gel? But for me, yeah, like you said, you just can't look past them. They've got all the makings of doing the job. I don't think they do it comfortably. I think they have their wobbles. Just oh my God, Ipswich lost. Like a few teams have, mainly Sunderland over the past few years. You go there and think, wow, we have just done something special. We've beaten a very good Ipswich side. So they'll have their wobbles, but over a season they can have enough. Just to back up my thank you, Peter, for reminding me. Saw today as well to replace. Well, with the loss of Crooks from Rathbone from Rochdale, they've had a fee accepted for him as well. So that's another really good signing for League One. But yeah, Ipswich for me, too much quality, too many goals. And yeah. Graham, finish the pod off with your champions, please.
Very, very specific reason for this. Lincoln City, because Chris Maguire deserves it.
I forgot you to mention Lincoln. Oh my God.
Chris deserves it. That's my thoughts. That's it. Good night, guys. Have a good night. Thanks.
No other reason.
Nope. Chris just deserves it. And I really like Tom Clark, who's obviously a big Lincoln fan, one of my friends. Seems like a nice guy, so it'd be nice for them to win it. It'll be Ipswich probably, but I couldn't just agree with you. So
fair play. Okay. That concludes the 1 to 24. I'm going to get a little graphic out for our top 6 and bottom 6 a bit later on. A bit of a spoiler alert for some, but some mixed bag of predictions there. I think someone had Rotherham 10th, and I have them 2nd. So it's certainly going to be an interesting season. We've still 2 or 3 weeks to go before the window ends. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining in. Thanks everyone for listening. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Look, the other day we're over 300, I think, which is really good considering we were on less than 100 a couple of months ago. But keep subscribing and helping us grow. And I'm away next game, and I can't believe it. First game of the season, and I'm on holiday, so I'll leave you in the trusted hands of Matt and Graham, and maybe I'll get a special guest on as well. But first game of the season, fingers crossed there's some cracking results in there. And yeah, our next show next Monday. We'll also got a podcast out tomorrow evening with John and the guys at MK for their reaction of the obvious spoke about Russell Martin as well. So that'll be out tomorrow evening as well, just as an additional bonus before Monday's live show. But from all of us at the third tier, good night.